So, if you made your way to this channel, you probably at least have a decent idea of how to optimize a character. But what happens if you don't optimize and your entire party doesn't optimize? How bad is it really? Well, I'm going to try to show you. Hello folks, Phil Gallagher aka Thraben, you here for another Pathfinder 2nd Edition video, and welcome to How Good is a Bad Party? I had this sort of neat idea for a video, and I hope you find it useful. Before we get started here, the biggest thing that I want to say is that next week, as of the time where this airs for non-members, I will be at PAX Unplugged, spending most of the weekend playing Starfinder 2E. You see me there, feel free to say hello. Would love to hear from some fans of the channel, and looking forward to getting in some games with some of you. If you're enjoying my content, please consider subscribing to support my content. It is a lot of work, and I am working very far ahead to make sure that I can go to multiple Pathfinder and Starfinder events next month and have a blast. If you are in the position to support me financially, YouTube memberships are probably the best way to do that as of right now, and if you're not, likes and comments on the video mean a lot too. So today we're going to kind of go into video game mode, and I'm going to use Dawnsbury Days, which is a Pathfinder 2E based game, to kind of show you what a good party might look like and what a bad party might look like. We're going to talk about some math and some anecdotes and talk about when that bad party is going to feel particularly bad. So today is some math, a lot of anecdotal evidence. So let's kind of get directly into it. Somewhere in the last couple of days, I saw a post from someone, it might have been in our content creator Discord, and the gist of it was adventure paths are built for sort of the lowest common denominator, so that the people who are not experienced can play through and be successful. So it should not require crazy optimization in order to make it so that it is viable to play the game. You want people to kind of be able to do whatever you want. And for the people who want to optimize, there are very, very easy ways to buff up the numbers and make things harder. Or you can play homebrew campaigns. The math is very real in this system. Since a lot of the math of the system is innate to character, like level ups and such, it's hard for your numbers to be that off. Things like your hit points and your accuracy and your saving throws are largely tied to your stats. And assuming that you have done the bare bones research of, oh, my character is strength based, I need to maximize my strength, assuming that you have done that much, while the power gap between characters can be very large, the baseline in this system is actually pretty high. And that's why I was kind of curious about this thought experiment. I built one team of monsters that will chew through anything that I throw at them. Well, how does the lower sort of proficiency party actually fare? I've made it so that their stats are totally reasonable. Are they optimal? No. Are any of the choices on those characters really optimal? No, not even close. But the core math of the system means that their saving throws and their accuracies and things like their damage dice aren't going to be all that far off from the other party. So how much does the math of the system save the hyper suboptimal party? Well, here's my anecdotal experience in running it through the first leg of this game. So let's use Dawnsbury Days here to take a look at what a good party might look like and just kind of quickly visualize this. And we've done party building in plenty of other places, so we'll kind of go over this quickly. A War Priest Cleric gives you a decent melee option attached to a Divine Caster with a ton of extra max rank heals. Just fantastic, well-rounded character. And we can have 2 flanking buddies for this character to increase their accuracy. A polearm fighter that is going to be capable of doing great things with reactive strike, and a justice champion as well. The justice champion can have lay on hands, which means that if your cleric goes down, you still have really solid options to get that cleric back up. And a Justice Champion has pretty darn good damage mitigation as well. Rounding out the party is an Elemental Sorcerer, which has a ton of spell slots as a 4 spell slot per level caster, and you also have a good 1-action focus spell. Well, if these are relatively optimized characters, then that means that you might be doing things like being versatile heritage and natural ambition humans, so that you come out of the gate with an extra general feat and an extra first level feat. On top of that, we can make sure to kind of optimize our combat oriented stuff, getting more focus points via a Blessed One dedication, picking up that heavy armor proficiency, and overall just creating a very well rounded character with an excellent mix of spells that cover just about any situation. We have the ability to buff up allies, we can cover multiple defenses, we've got Fortitude, Reflex, and Will covered on this one. Fortitude, Reflex, Will, and technically Fear is that as well. And we have a good range of cantrips, including some AoE ones. This is a solid character. As far as our sorcerer goes, again, we'll just kind of be humans, pick up all that good stuff. We'll pick up a psychic dedication as well to make sure that we get extra focus points for our cool sorcerer elemental toss ability. And we can just kind of cover a lot of the classics here relatively quickly. Third rank Fear, Lightning Bolt, Fireball, Force Barrage, Acid Grip. We can also have heals on this character as well as a Primal Sorcerer. Pick up Sudden Bolt, Bone Shaker. There's a lot to like here. And as far as our melee characters go, eye roll, we can take the Exemplar dedication and power up our weapon even further, taking great athletics maneuvers like Slam Down to round out the character. We can have the Guy's Arm, which is a great weapon. And then over on our Justice Champion, again, Natural Ambition Human, Power Gaming, let's go. We can get a focus point at level 1, as well as ranged reprisal. We can also go Exemplar here to power up our weapon as well. And then we can end up with a Justice Champion with a great reach, and we have just a ton of reactions in this party. We have a ton of flexibility. 1, 2, 3 of the characters innately have healing. There's a lot to like in this obviously strong party. So now, what we're going to do is take each one of those good party members and imagine that we built a bad counterpart for them, keeping the relative roles the same, but just picking worse choices at every possible step so that we can compare this good party to this bad party. So rather than the extremely accurate and flexible polearm fighter, we're going to go with a weapon inventor. Inventor is seen as one of the weaker classes, and weapon inventor is seen as the weakest of the 3, I guess now 4, options for that inventor. This inventor is going to be a halfling for flavor reasons. And for every character in this bad party, I'm going to imagine that they don't have a free archetype, and I'm going to play without it because they have chosen something fully for flavor. So rather than getting all of these bonus general feats and all of these optimizations for our power, we're just going to kind of make all of our decisions as if we were doing this fully on flavor. So we will just use a big chonky weapon and go bam. Ignore the rune here, the wounding one, we wouldn't start with that. This is me using a screen from later on. Rather than a Justice Champion, we will have a Medicine Investigator. Again, Investigator, seen by the community as a relatively weak class overall. We'll be a Gnome. Gnomes are cool. And we're just gonna, use a short sword. Again, ignore the bonus rune there. We're just gonna use a short sword, and we're gonna see how we can go through with that. And I'm not gonna try to patch the Investigator's biggest weakness, which is the fact that when you devise a stratagem, if you don't have something like a spell to cast, then you don't do anything with a lot of your turns. We're not going to build around that. We're not going to play around that. Ignore the items that I picked up over the course of the journey, once again. Rather than the extremely flexible healing font cleric, our healer is going to be a druid. So rather than all the max rank heals that we're automatically going to get, we're going to have 3 heals instead. So we'll be at a massive disadvantage as far as being a healer goes. And beyond that, I'm also gonna pick, honestly, suboptimal spells. We're gonna take 2 reflex-focused spells rather than spreading it out across the saves and gaining access to a fortitude save as well. And we're just gonna take some spells like Grease that are fun and probably don't have really good uses in combat. And beyond that, a first level protector tree is relatively weak once you are at 3rd level. We're a Leshy here, because we like fruit. And we'll be an animal druid so that we pick up a companion that's at least worth something. And as the kicker, since this game is based on pre-remaster stuff, we are going to use a Cosmos Oracle. Back when oracles did not get 4 spell slots per level and had much worse rules in regard to the Cursebound. So not only are we going to take the Oracle, another class that the community does not think is particularly great, but we're also going to use the pre-remaster version, which was even worse. We'll be a dragon. Dragons are cool. And we'll pick up a decent selection of offensive spells here. That much I will say. Because I think if I'm going to make an at least somewhat fair comparison, we will assume that the character that is attempting to blast will at least pick blasty spells. Agonizing Despair, Lightning Bolts, Inner Radiance Torrents, Bone Shaker Harm, same sorts of things overall. But ultimately, this is a much noticeably weaker party with basically no real reactions across the board. So if Pathfinder is a 3-action economy that is secretly a 4th action economy because reactions are involved, and we are completely ignoring reactions in comparison to the other party with their fighters and champions, there should be a very noticeable power gap between these two parties. So let's talk about it. In case you aren't familiar with Dawnsbury Days, the first leg of this campaign has 4 encounters and then a long rest, and then 3 encounters with a relatively difficult boss scenario. And this Coven fight is also a boss scenario. The Will-O-Wisp is sort of an annoying scenario that you need to be prepared for, but it's not actually all that bad. I've played probably well over 100 total Dawnsbury Days rotations of the entire game, and I will admit, this was not a good party. That said, it really wasn't all that bad. The first encounter was cleared with 0 difficulty. There's an invisible enemy in the first encounter that I decided that I would just brute force rather than use something like Fairy Fire on it, and it was totally fine. The second encounter, the swamp one, is kind of 3 encounters built into one scenario. And while some characters did go down in this one, at no point was I in any danger of death at all. And it was still absolutely, totally fine. Not a problem. The Will-O-Wisp is basically immune to spells with a few caveats, and is relatively difficult to deal with. Well, guess what? 1 investigator with a short sword and 1 inventor with a big old axe was still enough to power through that, and the spellcasters focused on the other characters and did things like give guidance and attempt demoralizes even if they weren't going to be particularly successful. The Coven fight is the first real boss fight of the game. It features 3 hags, and I'm not going to lie to you, this was the first point where I thought conceptually this party might be able to die. But as luck would have it, all 3 of the hags happened to line up, allowing me to get a very, very juicy lightning bolt on the 3 of them, and took this from what I thought was going to be a very, very difficult scenario into a relatively trivial one. I don't know if I said this already, but I was playing through on the hard difficulty as well, which has some teeth. It is very, very possible to lose on the hard encounter, and even with my suboptimal party, it was totally fine. As we moved on to the second leg of this journey here, I did start to feel some of the party's suboptimal choices coming back to bite them. The Demonic Fortress scenario included essentially 3 large rooms, which each had some enemies in them, and some party members went down during this one, and this was kind of a point where battle medicine and such had to be used. In the final room of this encounter, the druid's animal companion did die. So as far as losses go, that was the first one. It went down, it crit failed a recovery check, and that kind of was what it was. There wasn't a lot to be done there. I needed to make sure that I didn't lose the encounter, but that meant letting the animal companion go. And that meant, for the hardest encounter of the entire first leg here, that I was not actually going to have that animal companion to serve as a meat shield. Whoops, not great. In encounter 6, there was a very, very hard to hit and hard to damage enemy that has a lot of resistances, and it is a pain in the butt, even for a decent party. An NPC joins you for this leg, and the bless there helped out a lot that I threw up with the NPC. The encounter was not difficult, however, because my clear speed was slow, a bunch of my characters went into the next encounter with mummy rot. So that's not a status effect I usually have going into the next fight when I play a reasonable party. So I am down an animal companion, and 2 of my characters end up with mummy rot going into the next scenario. And the solo boss fight was accordingly scary. I don't have all that many spell slots on my casters. So this was not okay, I just get to throw a max level spell slot every time at these. I had exhausted resources over the course of a long adventuring day, as there's kind of 3 rooms with fights in this encounter and 2 rooms with fights in this encounter. So I was not walking in at full resources. And this encounter 7 features a succubus enemy that essentially can shut down your character's turns by controlling them or by giving them a passionate kiss status effect, which means, hey, you can't attack me or do anything cool to me in this turn cycle. Now, was I successful in this encounter? Yes, I still did win. We're going to go big for this. However, was it easy? No. No, it was not. Was there very real fear of dying? Yes, absolutely. Did multiple different party members go down and needed to be propped back up? Yes, absolutely. Would 1 or 2 roles being a little different have changed that? Again, yes, absolutely. So, can the suboptimal party still be successful due to the core math of the system? 100%. Is that party going to safely be consistent? And is that party, over a large enough sample size, going to be able to hang in there? That's where we start getting a little bit more dicey. And while I could go on and on and on and on, I think you have the general idea here. And I think if we continued playing this party or another party that looked similar to it, we would kind of see the same sorts of things, where the boss encounters after your resources have been taxed, after your animal companions die, that sort of stuff. I think you are going to be feeling that strain over the long adventuring day, and let's kind of talk about that a little bit more. So, there's one thing that I want to address before we move forward, and that's the fact that I'm pretty darn good at strategy, if you don't mind me tooting my own horn here. So, I might be able to play this low quality build, really builds, there's 4 of them, in a high danger scenario, and I might be able to offset those facts with my own skill level. And I want to kind of talk about this visual here, which I'm sure there is a better way to visualize this, but I don't have time to figure out exactly what that would be. I think there's 3 factors relevant to the current situation. That is the party quality, the relative danger level that you are in, and the overall quality of the player. I think that if you have a low quality party, like the one that we were just looking at, and you have low player quality, And by that, I mean new, inexperienced players who maybe are just going to attack too many times, not really understand what map is, not understand athletics maneuvers and things like that. If you keep them in a low danger scenario, their parties are fine. If you put them in an average scenario, they're probably going to get through. If you put the low party quality in the hands of inexperienced players into a higher danger level thing, though, I think you are bending this little graph here a little bit too much, and that is going to be problematic. You probably don't want to put the low quality party members comprised of new players into mostly severe and extreme encounters. That's where they're going to struggle the most. If you have that low quality PC in the hands of an extremely skilled player, well, they might be able to survive those high danger level scenarios like I did, but it's still going to be tough. I think most of the time when you have something like Pathfinder Society, where you have what is going to be overall a low or average party, because you are not building for party cohesion. Maybe you have too many martial characters. Maybe you have too many spellcasters. Maybe you are missing some crucial stat or some crucial part of combat. As long as that danger level is not going to be high, it maybe doesn't matter if the party quality is low or average, or even if the player's skill is low or average, because you are not going to make that danger level into like high and extreme encounters all of the time, because things like Pathfinder Society scenarios are going to be built for the average player, or honestly, probably the below average player. And the builds that look really strong and the players who are very skillful will really have a chance to shine. But I don't think the average or even below average Pathfinder 2E party is going to struggle in something like a Pathfinder Society scenario. In all of the times that I have been playing at conventions and stuff, I've never seen a PC die, ever. And I have not been in any scenario in which I felt like death was real and on the table, including when I played an extremely underlevel character and the GM was like, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And I was like, "Yes, absolutely. This is what excites me. This is the stuff that I get going for. Like, let me survive this scenario that I am not supposed to be in." So even though I, as a strategist, spend a lot of time thinking about what is optimal, what is the best, how do I make this build stronger, how do I round out my weaknesses, what is the best archetype to take for this character, what is my best ancestry, which feat do I take with natural ambition, even though I spend a lot of time thinking about that sort of stuff, I think the game's math is solid enough that even if you don't spend time thinking about stuff, you're probably still going to have a good time. Now, the more stress you put onto those weak player characters, though, the greater chance they have at breaking. The longer you make that adventuring day, the more severe and extreme encounters you have, I think those sorts of things are going to put those low quality parties into real danger. Whereas your high quality optimized party with perfect archetypes and whatnot are going to be able to still breeze through that most of the time until you start getting to the severe encounters where death is still very much going to be on the table, even for an optimized, relatively strong party. So I hope there was something helpful here in this video. This was kind of just something that I had been passively thinking about, and putting it to the test, at least with a very, very small data pool via Donsbury Days, was a fun thought experiment. Feel free to get in the comments below and discuss this, and I hope you all have a great rest of the day. See ya!